Good evening, I guess, now. Everybody, welcome to the Politico Workspace. We've got a big guest here in Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, just like, what, we're an hour and a half away from your
I'm speaking tonight, I think like 8:30 or so, something like that, a couple hours.
Well, sir, we don't know each other rather than just meeting backstage right now, but there are a lot of politicos who do know you and reporters from other news organizations who know you that I know. What do I need to know about Governor Shapiro? Well, he's very lawyerly, very controlled, very disciplined. You won't take him anywhere he doesn't want to go. You won't trick him into saying something off message.
So you're going to try.
Well, did you take that as an insult or a compliment, what these other reporters say?
Whatever y'all think. But I do try and be disciplined. I try and be thoughtful about what I say.
Very good. I took it as a challenge.
Okay.
But first off, so you won't go anywhere you don't want to go. Where do you want to go? What's on your mind tonight? We'll start with a nice softball. We'll trick you into.
I'll tell you what's on my mind tonight. What's on my mind a lot. It was on my mind in my campaign for governor back in 2022. It's on the minds of Pennsylvanians routinely when I'm traveling in rural, urban, suburban communities. And what I'm going to be talking about tonight, which is freedom and democracy. It's something I've been talking about for years. It's something that I think is the centerpiece of this campaign of Kamala Harris versus the other guy. And I'm excited to prosecute the case on freedom, both tonight in my remarks and over the next 75 days of this election.
Got it. How to win, and I'm hoping you can answer this both as a governor, but also as a politician and somebody who knows your state well and in very tactile terms. What does it take for a Democrat to run successfully in Pennsylvania?
Yeah. So listen, I've been on the ballot since 2004 in Pennsylvania. I have never lost an election. I've run in 3 statewide elections. I've won all 3 and twice set a record for the most votes ever. So I know a little something about winning in Pennsylvania. You got to show up. You got to treat people with respect. You got to understand that campaigns aren't won only in an urban area or only in a rural area, but in urban, rural, and suburban communities. You got to listen to people's needs, and you've got to deliver for them. What I've learned during my time running for office successfully in Pennsylvania is no matter how different the terrain looks, folks basically want the same 4 things. They want really good schools for their kids and grandkids. They want safe communities. They want economic opportunity, no matter what you look like, where you come from, who you love, who you pray to. And they want their freedoms and rights protected. That's true when I'm in rural Venango County, and that's true when I'm in urban Philadelphia County. And the reality is, if you can speak to those issues, if you can show up, treat people with respect, and deliver for them, they're going to reward you with their vote. And I've been pleased to not only earn Democratic votes, but a whole lot of independent and Republican votes as well.
I must say I was surprised in the 2016 election, but I wasn't surprised as many of my colleagues. I've got family and grew up myself in Western New York, so right up Route 15 from Washington, D.C., through Harrisburg, through Williamsport.
Right through the center of Pennsylvania.
Right through the center, and you could hardly miss it, the amount of enthusiasm that was there just from yard signs and all the rest for Donald Trump at that time. What is that about in the state that has been historically Democratic, and of course it's got these 2 very strong urban hubs at each end? What do you think is the state of his movement?
Well, Donald Trump won in 2016 by 44,000 votes. In a state of 13 million people, about over 9 million registered voters. So you're talking about less than 1%. We've got razor-thin elections. I think it's really important to note, though, since that night in 2016, every single time Donald Trump or one of his offspring have been on the ballot, they've gotten beat. I beat, his offspring, Doug Mastriano, and a whole lot of other candidates who tried to adopt Trumpism have lost. You've seen that not just statewide. You've seen that in school board races. You've seen that in other competitive districts as well. So I think while there's some energy and fervency toward him, it has not been a winning formula. They have lost a hell of a lot more than they've won in Pennsylvania since 2016.
He can't transfer to other people. That's apparent by that record that you described. How much does he still have himself? The Obamas last night seemed to be playing into not so much the issue of he's a mortal threat to democracy. They may well believe that, but that we're tired of him. We've got to move past the chaos. He's a buffoon. He's the neighbor who won't turn off his
leaf blower.
Exactly.
Yeah. I thought that was awesome. That was Michelle, who, by the way, she rocked last night. I mean, she was incredible. Look, one thing I'd respectfully amend your question.
Sure.
Remember, he lost in 2020. People remember 2016, but he lost in 2020 by twice the amount of votes that he won by in 2016. So let's not lose sight of that fact, and let's not lose sight of the fact that Donald Trump, when he was in office, brought a whole lot of chaos, fewer jobs, and a lot less freedom to Pennsylvania and across the country. And I think there are some people out there, not in this room, and I'm not intending to insult anybody, but there's some people out there who've got a little brain fog, who don't remember the chaos that he brought. And I guess what I would say to you in response to your question is, I think the Obamas were right to talk about that chaos, right? The leaf blower aspect of it. But don't sleep on democracy and freedom. That is on the ballot, and Donald Trump is a threat to it. Remember what he did when he had the keys to the White House the first time. He ripped away the fundamental freedom from millions of women to be able to make decisions over their own bodies. And remember, he did not know what the hell he was doing when he got there. And he had guardrails around him. He had people around him who were stopping him from doing stuff. He's unmoored. He's got no guardrails. He's got no conviction other than, the 34 felonies. And this is a guy who right now fundamentally is dangerous when it comes to our democracy and wants to restrict more of our freedoms and will inject more chaos in our lives. I think people are able to kind of walk and chew gum, meaning they're able to understand two things at once. They can understand the threat to democracy and freedom, and they can understand the chaos that he injects into the conversation.
Obviously, you were one of the people that Vice President Harris was talking to seriously, considering seriously to be her running mate. The fun thing about covering politics these days is almost every person in the audience, every reader who cares about this stuff is themselves a political consultant or a would-be political consultant. Just as there anyone who lives in Philadelphia is a would-be coach of the Eagles or whatever. But plenty of people were saying,
I mean, look, some of us could coach the Eagles. No, we got a great coach.
But there was people, why not pick somebody who would take a critical swing state, there's not that many of them, and take it off the table? Would you have taken it off the table?
Listen, I recognize in this room, you're great writers of Politico. Y'all analyze politics and you think about it. But what I think you're missing in this, and I mean this respectfully, I'm not one to bash the media in any way. No. I mean this respectfully. This was never a political conversation. I said for weeks leading up to it, I guess 2 weeks leading up to it, that this was a deeply personal decision for the vice president.
Sure.
It's also a deeply personal decision for me.
Right.
And so I think it's important that folks understand that sure, there's political considerations, but at the end of the day, this is about her vision for that office and who best fits that vision for that office.
Sure. And what about your vision of your own, how you want to serve? You've obviously got very important responsibilities now. Your spouse and I were just talking, you've still got relatively young children.
We do.
What were the pluses and cons in your own mind as to whether you would want to put yourself forward for such a responsibility? Obviously knowing that it was the nominee's decision.
I mean,
but you must have had your own calculations, your own very serious conversation with yourself and with the important people in your life.
Lori, my wife Lori, who's over here, who's my rock. We've been together since the 9th grade. She hates when I tell people that, but it's true.
Been together continuously.
We had a little break. I'm not getting into the break part, but you can't ask me about that. We talk about everything, and we've grown up in this together, and we are totally committed to public service. And when you're totally committed to public service, and you've got 4 kids, that means they're engaged and committed in public service as well. We're very willing to make that sacrifice to serve others. And I think I've got and I mean this respectfully to any other elected official, I think I got the best job in American politics, being the governor of Pennsylvania. One of the things I say as I travel across the Commonwealth and try and motivate others to pass bills or make investments to help other people is, I think every Pennsylvanian should have the freedom to chart their own course and the opportunity to succeed. And for me, I've always tried to do my politics in a way that I could chart my own course. And I love being able to do that as governor.
Now, so you taunted me earlier about this isn't all just about politics. Of course, it's about policy substance. Let me ask a couple of questions on that score, important to Pennsylvania,
Sure.
and how Pennsylvania responds to a Democratic ticket. Vice President Harris has had to explain her record on fracking, where she was previously opposed to it, and now made clear that she has an open mind. You yourself, although you're a supporter of the Biden administration, had been publicly critical of them for trying to, as I understand it, to control or limit exports on LNG.
Yeah, I just thought they should move quicker in their process, yeah.
You thought it was going too slow.
Well, they put a pause. I said the pause should be quick. We got to get people to work, yeah.
How will these energy issues play out in the fight for Pennsylvania?
Energy is a huge issue in Pennsylvania. I'm an all of the above energy governor. We are a net energy exporter. Energy puts people to work in Pennsylvania. Energy puts food on the table and creates family sustaining jobs. Energy is a big reason why we've got so many members of the building trades in Pennsylvania doing incredibly important work. And I must tell you that the fact that the vice president, now our nominee, heard that from people in Pennsylvania and made clear that she's evolved on that position, I think is really a sign of strength, a sign that she's listened to the importance of energy in Pennsylvania and that she's going to continue to help us be a net energy exporter and put people to work.
The state now, we're 10, 12 weeks out from the election. Not really that far. We're 10 to 12 weeks out from November 5th. We're not that far out from voting, right? Because
no, mid-September.
Mid-September in Pennsylvania. Give us your appraisal of where the state stands now, and what is the work before Vice President Harris and Governor Walz in your state? Where are they on offense? They just have to make their position known.
Right.
Where are they on defense, where they have to reassure blocks of voters about where they stand?
Yeah. Well, let's recognize, I think Kamala Harris has been our nominee for 30 days or something, 35 days. It's extraordinary, the ground that she's been able to make up. She took a race where Joe Biden was trailing, right? Let's be real. And she's effectively turned it into about an even race. I know you guys have polling, others have polling. It's +1, -1. It's basically an even race. In Pennsylvania, I think I said this earlier, you can pick up 49 yards, but then that last yard and a half to get to the other side of the field and win, that's a slog. But we're now at a point where we can pick up that next yard and a half. And I think what I've seen from the vice president and Governor Walz over the last even just week, showing up in a community like Beaver County, which is southwestern Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh. J-Mart may be the only person here who knows where Beaver County is. That is a really important sign that they understand the importance of not just winning in Philly and Pittsburgh and the Philly suburbs, but in these other communities that have oftentimes been left behind. I was proud in my governor's race to win Beaver County for the first time as a Democrat in a whole long time. There are other communities like that. They're showing up there. They're talking about reducing costs. They're talking about strengthening our economy, and I think they're putting us in a strong position to win. We got to run through the tape, but we got the wind at our backs, and I feel really, really good about Kamala Harris. And I must just tell you, Tim Walz was a great addition to the ticket to be able to speak to those communities. Laura and I feel really blessed to consider Tim and Gwen good friends. And it's exciting for us now to see our fellow Pennsylvanians, our fellow Americans get to know Tim and Gwen. And I think they're going to be real assets in helping deliver Pennsylvania.
The Harris-Walz tickets had a real surge of momentum, it seems. It's reflected in the polls. I'm also aware that a number of Democrats over the past 25 years have seemingly started in good position and a very effective opposition. People might say a ruthless opposition or unfair opposition, or maybe they would just say an effective opposition, has taken Democratic candidates. Maybe in some cases this has happened to Republican candidates, but the most vivid examples are Democratic candidates, and all of a sudden make them unrecognizable to themselves. That's effectively what happened to Vice President Gore. That's effectively what happened to
John Kerry.
To John Kerry in 2004. I think Secretary Clinton experienced some of that in 2016. Surely that's coming, right? And what do these two need to do to be more like Barack Obama or Bill Clinton in being able to surmount that and not have the same fate as Al Gore, John Kerry, Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, and listen, I don't want anyone to take the comments I made a moment ago about the enthusiasm I feel for the Harris-Walz ticket, the momentum that we have, to suggest that we get to now kind of sleep on this. I'm Jewish. Some of you may have heard that in the last few weeks. And so I worry about everything, right? And that is just kind of like how I was born, how I was raised, and how I lived my life. So I worry about every little thing. And so when something's going really well, you worry about what could go wrong. So that's how I think about these campaigns. And for me, I think what I'm seeing is a candidate, or a nominee, pardon me, a nominee in Kamala Harris who knows she's going to get politically punched, but has a history of being able to absorb the punch and punch back even harder. What I'm seeing is Donald Trump not having any idea how to handle her because he doesn't know how to handle strong women. I think we have seen that throughout his failed career. And he is someone who I think, even if he figures out how to land that punch, will be met with a swift counter punch. The key is, in Pennsylvania and elsewhere, just keep moving. Absorb it, keep moving forward, stay on offense. And I think the Harris-Walz ticket is on offense. I have no doubt that concerning attacks will come, and I have no doubt that they'll be able to respond to them well.
Governor, you mentioned your Jewish faith, and I do have a...
that was a joke about the worry thing. I hope you all...
They got it. They got it.
Got
this is a Politico crowd. They know how to have some fun with this stuff. But this is a serious question. I was having a conversation some months back with it was a background conversation, so I'm not at liberty to say who, but I will just describe this person as a very prominent Jewish American who's active in national debate. And this person was describing something I've also heard in more private conversations from Jewish friends, Jewish colleagues, which is, you know what, after October 6th, 7th, I'm sorry, beg your pardon. As a Jewish American, I felt very alone. Alone in my party, alone in my country. And this person was quite blunt about the Democratic Party. After the Minneapolis murder of George Floyd, every synagogue in the country was in support of Black Lives Matter. After October 7th, not just black constituencies, but many traditional parts of the Democratic coalition were, oh, this is complicated. We don't necessarily know where we stand or we want to take a stand. This person was saying, I feel hurt, angry, alone.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you at all?
I think it's really important to separate out complicated from anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
So let's separate that for a moment. It is true that there is anti-Semitism in our country. And let's speak frankly, it's true that there's anti-Semitism in our politics, in both parties. And I think it's really critical that leaders speak and act with moral clarity. Speak out against that. And I also think that moral clarity shouldn't be limited to only speaking out against anti-Semitism. We've seen a rise in Islamophobia. We got to stand up and speak out against that. We can never condone racism, homophobia, any form of hatred and bigotry. By the way, the number one guy who pushes these types of tropes into our politics is Donald Trump. And so we got to speak out against that. Ironically, he's also one of the people who's stoking up a lot of the division right now and using anti-Semitism and using me and others to try and divide people. And that guy has absolutely no credibility to speak on these issues. He is morally bankrupt when it comes to speaking and acting with moral clarity. So I think it's incumbent upon everybody to speak up and speak out against all forms of hate. Now, why did I say we have to separate out those two concepts? Because what happened on October 7th needs to be condemned by everyone. The 1,200 people who were killed at a music festival, the kibbutz in their community, the hundreds who were taken hostage, including Americans. Let's not lose sight of that. At the hands of a defined terrorist organization, Hamas, defined by the United States government. It is true that we need to grieve for them. It is also true that we can grieve for those who are dying in Gaza, for the innocent lives that are being lost there, that are being taken there. I don't think those two concepts are mutually exclusive. My heart aches for all people who are involved in this. I want the hostages home, and I want to see an end to the violence. I understand that that may seem complicated to some people. But what I think we need to remember is that you can stand up and speak out and express opinion on a policy in the Middle East. But we all have to be united when it comes to standing up and speaking out against anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and all forms of hate. And it is possible for people to carry on all those conversations at once. Most American people do. I understand that is hard sometimes to consume in our media ecosystem, something that is nuanced and thoughtful like that. But I think that's where most people are. That's certainly where I am.
It used to be almost a given that to be a Democrat, to be a member of the Progressive Coalition, meant that you were in support of Israel. One consequence of really a generation in the Israeli government dominated by Prime Minister Netanyahu is that that's no longer a given. There's clearly a divide, a generational divide, and an ideological divide within the Democratic Party. How durable do you think that is going to be? Is this something that Democrats are just going to live with for the indefinite future, that the parties have some disagreement on this issue?
Israel is our critical ally in the Middle East and around the world. You have heard that reaffirmed by Joe Biden many times, and you've heard that reaffirmed, by Kamala Harris. That is the policy of our party, the policy of our nation. Let's be really clear. Benjamin Netanyahu has done a great disservice to Israel, I believe, and I think he's done a great disservice to the way Israel is perceived in this country. I have said many times, dating back many years, I think he's a terrible leader. I think he's leading Israel and has been leading Israel down a dangerous and destructive path long before October 7th. The so-called judicial reforms that really sought to divide Israelis also drove a wedge here in the United States with so many constituencies that are important to me, important to our party, and important to America's interests. And I just think he is someone who is not helping the cause when it comes to Israel.
Vice President Harris made clear, I think emphatically clear, that she did not believe that the Israel-Gaza issue or the religious faith issue was not a factor in her decision that she made about a running mate. At the same time, it is just true that there were progressive activists or purported progressive activists calling you names. Genocide Josh and all the rest. That must have outraged you, and I'm wondering whether you hold any political leaders responsible for that, or at the minimum for not calling their own supporters off.
I know you stated this in your question, but I want you to hear this in my voice. It's very important that you hear this from me. Anti-Semitism played absolutely no role in the dialogue I had with the Vice President. Absolutely none. As I said at the outset, she had a deeply personal decision to make, so did I, and anti-Semitism, and frankly, those ridiculous attacks played no role. And I think it's important that you hear that directly from me, and I appreciate the way you phrased that question, stating the truth. Look, I recognize that I was attacked for my faith. I am very proud of my faith. My faith calls me to serve. Those attacks didn't hurt my feelings. I mean this is all disrespect to reporters in the room. If you write something mean about me, I don't get particularly down. If you write something nice about me, I don't get particularly up. I'm very confident in the decisions I make and the way I am leading my life. I think what upset me about this was the way it made other people feel.
Yeah.
The number of people who came up to me, Jewish and non-Jewish, who said that they were feeling targeted by the attacks against me. That actually upset me, especially when it was younger people who were saying to me, you know, I'm Jewish, but I'm worried about being open about my faith. Now, I'm never here to tell anybody how they should practice or how they should live their lives, but when someone tells you that they want to be proud of their faith and they feel like they can't be, that's upsetting. Whether you're Jewish, Christian, you name it, Muslim. And that is what upset me about it, not the attacks on me. I'm a big boy, I can take it. It's the way it made other people feel.
I want to lighten this up just a little bit. You're a well-dressed guy.
I literally wear the same thing every day.
You, like me, are an employer. You've got young people working for you. Different dress codes vary. Would it be okay for somebody to work for the governor of Pennsylvania who wanted to come to work in shorts and a hoodie? Would that be all right with you?
Look, here's our dress code. How about I answer it that way?
Okay.
Typically, I wear a white shirt and a blue suit and sneakers. Kind of like those, but they're black. They told me I had to wear a tie today for this speech.
Oh, okay.
Let me tell you, as soon as I'm done with that speech, I want to get rid of the tie. And that's kind of how we roll in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You want to be professional. You want to respect the office of the governor, as my team does. We also want to be loose and comfortable, too.
That would assumably apply not just the governor's office, but say other positions of U.S. Senate or what have you?
That's a question for Chuck Schumer to decide what people should wear there.
In fairness, though, you and Senator Fetterman, it seems like you don't click. What's that about?
No, we're good. I think folks have made too much of this. And listen, my team and John's team, Bob Casey's team, our entire congressional delegation, Republican and Democrat, we all work really well together. They're doing important work for Pennsylvania. I need them to be successful so we can be successful in Pennsylvania. They need me to be successful so they can do what they do at the federal level. And I'm grateful for their service. I'm grateful for John's service, Bob Casey's service, and we're going to continue to work well together.
When there was so much speculation and curiosity about you from outside Pennsylvania, who is this fellow Governor Shapiro, there were these videos shown of you in which you do sound remarkably like former President Obama.
Weird.
What's that about?
I don't know.
Do you think that
is weird? I heard a little bit of that.
Is it subconscious?
No,
like you
I don't know.
Grew up or were shaped in the early part of your career?
I mean, look, I think Barack Obama is the greatest orator of my lifetime. I've been blessed, I think, to live at a time where we've had, three really outstanding communicators as president. Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama. All three of them spoke in a really different way, but connected with people in a different way. Right. I think Barack Obama was really the most gifted orator of that group. And like J.D. Vance apparently insulted me about this. It's not really an insult to say you sound like the greatest orator of our time. I can tell you, I don't listen to Barack Obama speeches. I don't try and do that. I speak from the heart. Some of you saw the speech I gave in Philly a couple weeks ago when Kamala and Tim came out and introduced themselves as a ticket in Philly, and I was so psyched to have them there. Lori and I were together. I kind of just walked out there with a card of a few points I wanted to make, and I spoke from the heart. And so I guess, speaking from the heart is what I do, and if it sounds in a way that some people find appealing, then I guess that's good.
But it's not something deliberate or conscious
not at all.
On your part.
I'm going to speak tonight, so you'll tell me if.
We all get a chance to.
Y'all get to vote.
To judge. Tell us about that speech. What did you do to prepare? And do you get to say whatever you want, or is it super controlled?
No, they've been great.
Your script
I mean, you got to keep it tight because there's a lot of wonderful speakers, and of course tonight the main attraction is Tim Walz, and I'm excited to hear Tim speak. It's a little different for me because I usually don't write out my speeches. I just kind of have some ideas of what I want to talk about. So you got to really kind of get it tight. You got to keep it formal. And you got to keep it within a certain time range. So, you know, we don't have outside people who help us do that. I work with a great guy in my office named Will Simons on most of my speeches. He's terrific, and we kind of think alike on these things, and he can sort of critique me. I can go back and forth with him, and I really like that process that we have together. So that's what we did, and y'all can be the judge of how it is tonight. I will tell you that I'm going to be talking about freedom, something my wife challenged me on during the 2022 campaign. We were in the midst of a long campaign, and when you're traveling all across Pennsylvania, you're away for days and days and days, and I think it was a Monday, if I'm not mistaken. We had just gotten the kids on the bus. Laura and I were having a cup of coffee for like the 1 hour we were going to be together that week. And something was on TV with Republicans talking about freedom. And all I wanted to do was have a cup of coffee and talk to Lori about anything other than politics. We love sports, maybe talk about that. And she just started going off on, hey, these Republicans, they keep talking about freedom. They're not for freedom at all. What they're doing isn't about freedom. They're actually trying to take away our freedom. And all I wanted to do was not listen and focus on, you know, something else. But I did find myself starting to take a few notes. And those notes turned into a concept. And ultimately, a few days later, along the road trip in Erie, Pennsylvania, I gave my first speech about freedom, thanks to what Lori said to me at the kitchen table. And what you're going to hear tonight is a continuation of that conversation at the kitchen table, what we talked about in Erie and what we talked about throughout our campaign, the way I'm trying to govern in Pennsylvania, and what is at stake in this election.
Is there a way to talk about one of the most important issues related to freedom, abortion rights? Is there a way in Pennsylvania you find it's effective, most effective to talk about this issue versus other ways that are less effective? What is the way for Democrats to prosecute this case?
Yeah. I mean, I won my race with more votes than anybody ever in Pennsylvania. I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. I'm saying that because I leaned in on these issues, and Republicans, Democrats, and independents all found a home in our campaign. And they've continued to find a home in the way we govern.
And a lot of that flows directly from the threat to a legal right to abortion.
Well, standing up for freedom, I talk about freedom in an affirmative way, but also the risk that Donald Trump poses when it comes to freedom.
You know, we're almost out of time, and I know you're not going to violate confidences about the selection process for a vice presidential nominee, but I'm wondering if you could just talk about it at the personal level. What is that like to find yourself under consideration? What happens, especially in a highly concentrated search like that? Do you have to, like, you know, strip down? Do you have to send, you know, find tax records from 1990? Yeah. Just give us a sense of the experience.
I don't think it's sort of prudent for me to, you know, talk out of school on this stuff.
That lawyerly approach other people mentioned at the...
Listen, Vice President Harris, along with anyone else who's ever gone through this process in terms of selecting someone, they have a right to know everything they want to know about the people they're considering. And I don't think this was any different, presumably, than in the past. I think it was a little bit strange in the fact that you're in a position where you're being evaluated and judged, which I'm used to going through elections, but you're not really in a position to sort of speak out on this stuff or act the way you would if you're in the midst of a campaign. And by the way, that's the right way, because at the end of the day, as I've said many, many times, it's a personal decision for, in this case, Vice President Harris. And I think she made an outstanding pick in Tim Walz.
Last question, very quickly.
You said that was the last question before.
Well, respectful of your time, but for people, you've got an advantage. You know both of the candidates personally. With respect to Vice President Harris, who I think you knew from Attorney General days, right?
No, actually, we know each other from 20 years ago. She was a new prosecutor in San Francisco. I was a brand new state representative, and we were both selected to be fellows in the Aspen Institute.
What's something you would know about her that even a voter who pays lots of attention wouldn't necessarily know? The thing this tells you what you need to know about Vice President Harris. Can you give us an example?
Look, first off, I think the person that summed up who she is the best was Doug last night. I thought he just gave an incredible speech, and it was warm, and it invited the American people in to learn more about the Kamala Harris that he fell in love with and he's been married to for but they say, I think, 10 years tomorrow or something like that. Kamala is someone who really, I know her slogan is for the people. She's always been like that.
Yeah.
Like she's always been trying to figure out, how do I help that person, or how do I fix this, or how do I do that? She's very real, she's very genuine, she's very kind, and she is someone who I think is going to do a great job as the next president of the United States.
Governor Willard, you don't want to strain your vocal cords so close to showtime. Thank you very much for joining.
Good to be with you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.